Good morning. How are you? Good. One of the topics that you have been recurrently requesting is the guilt as a symptom or as a circumstance of life, as something that someone goes through throughout their life, and that really leave it with a lot of pain. I lived it. I felt it before I found myself, before finding this path that I have created with Lucre. And the first thing that I am going to say about guilt is that it is within a group, which is the group of great ignorances. Look, a symptom is ignorance, judgment is ignorance, suffering is ignorance, and guilt is ignorance. Maybe there is one more that I am not remembering at this moment, but all those things are ignorance. Now, hopefully one could say it, and automatically the sick, the one who judges, the one who suffers, and the one who feels guilty heal themselves, and it does not work like that. What happens is that they have a logic, as I always say, where one understands the origin of their symptoms, the origin of the judgment that they have, the origin of their suffering, and the origin of their guilt. The first thing I am going to tell you is that guilt is a self-immolation for not recognizing deep down that there is something or someone that actually harmed me, that I did an act too. And when I say it harmed me, I say it from the early stages of consciousness, because here in this didactic moment that I try to explain the guilt, it is useless to tell you that I am the creator of everything, because one goes back. The one who is guilt-prone takes it in the same way. For example, when we mention that a mother has a child with a certain symptom, sometimes it is a strong symptom or a symptom with a bad reputation, as we call here what other areas of medicine have called incurable or chronic. Here we call it symptom with a bad reputation, because many incurable have stopped being so, many chronic have stopped being so, from the point of view of humano puente. Then we call it symptom with a bad reputation. Let's suppose that a mother has a child with a symptom with a bad reputation, and I tell her, what happens is that you are creating it. From the first level of consciousness, that woman says, how are you telling me that I make him sick, that I made him sick, that I did it on purpose? And that is a type of lack of knowledge. The word ignorance also applies here, but sometimes it may sound too strong to some people, but it is a lack of knowledge, it is an intermediate vision about the situation. I tell you that you are creating it, and that it is for you. From a deeper level of consciousness, he does not exist, only you exist, suffering the circumstance of having a child with a certain symptom. And that itself is transferable to a lot of things, but it requires that one sees it work and there understands it. For example, one of the guilts that we find the most, the feeling of guilt, because guilt does not exist. But one of the feelings of guilt that we find the most is that of women who have had abortions. And maybe when they are older, there are things that they see in a different way. Or maybe, being adults, they want to have a child and they cannot, or being adults, they feel that they want to tell their children and they do not dare, and they feel guilty, so they come here. When I say they come here, I mean they go to a consultation, or they come to the gatherings that we offer with Lucre. Their history is analyzed, their unconscious history is analyzed, their transgenerational data is seen. And listen, always, 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 and in your case too, always, always, the abortion corresponds to a drama with a child above in the clan. When that child was born, that child later died, and here the mother unconsciously feels, I have to abort him, I have to abort him. So she aborts him because her unconscious mind tells her, what is going to happen with this child is huge. You are going to suffer like never before in your life, and the child is going to die. That is what the unconscious mind tells her. So maybe she aborts him. Or the unconscious mind says, they are going to take that child away from you because you are in the same situation as your grandmother when she had the child and it was taken away from her, because you are single, and your grandmother was kicked out of the family because she had a child while being single, and they kept the child. They made that child believe that he was the son of his grandparents. In reality, they skipped a generation and their real mother was kicked out. When the grandmother got pregnant, she was left alone, and since she was a single mother, she and her child were kicked out. And you are about to have the same number of child, with a name similar to that of the grandmother, and with similar circumstances regarding the date of conception. making a decision that you think you make. And I repeat, always, 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 every unborn. Pablo, how can you be sure? Because on the other side you have the brain stem that forces you to have a child. Because it is the main function of the brain stem. It forces you to have it. And there has to be a greater history of death associated with this circumstance that is taking place so that you unconsciously feel he does not have to be born. So, in the same way that there is this guilt that I explained to you here, which is one of the most common, one of the most important, I feel guilty for this. Pay attention. Before I forget, the answer to all the questions that you can ask me below this video is: go to a consultation. You will find Humano Puente consultants on the list, humanopuente.com. Consultants, consultant list. They attend online in different languages. I don't know how many languages. From all over the world, there are Humano Puente consultants in many countries. But the most important thing is that they attend you online. How can I do it? I just understood a little, but my guilt is different. My guilt is because I got divorced and I left my children. Find out, because in your past there is something stronger that forced you to do that. But since you are ignorant of what happened, you feel guilty. But my guilt is because I hit my son and I can't avoid it. Go to the past and find out where that unconscious order comes from. My guilt is because I am unfaithful. Go to the past and find out where that unconscious order comes from. Everything is ordered by the unconscious mind. The human being believes that he has an identity and that one decides things. That's the reason for that economy seminar telling humanity, please stop telling people to decide what economy they want, to decide what to do with their company, because the mind is distorted. You have to look for the unconscious identity that makes people generate the economy that they are generating, and the suffering and the effort they make to get it. Everything works in the same way. That unconscious identity that is not the true identity, but it is a much truer identity than the one you believe. It is the same one that made you make decisions like divorcing, like having an abortion, like leaving a person, like not taking care of your parents, the one that made you bad. In reality, you are an actor who has an unconscious director whispering in your ear. And pay attention, I don't care who gets angry, because if we are going to talk about consciousness, we are talking about the whole, and we are talking about the Great Spirit. Pay attention. If you are a violent person and you don't like being so, go find out what happened in the past, because you are not guilty. And if you are an abuser and you don't like being so, go find out in the past why you do it, because you are not guilty. And if you abandon someone, go to the past to find out why, what you are responding to, because you are not guilty. The guilt that I am talking about is the guilt of the spirit, the guilt of the deep, the guilt of the human, which is far beyond the other judgments and the other guilts and the other qualifications. That is why spirituality transcends politics. That is why spirituality transcends the social. That is why spirituality transcends everyday life. It transcends individual guilt and individual formats. That is why you do not find me commenting on those issues, because there, in the deep, in the most profound part, there is not a single guilty person. In the deepest part, there is not a single guilty one. Another form of guilt is that I feel guilty here in a certain situation. And as a child, my mother or father told me, you are to blame because such a thing happened. Allow yourself to make a trip to the past and realize that you were the most innocent of all. For example, here a person feels guilty because she is not taking care of her brother. It turns out that she is 45 years old and her brother is 40, but her brother does not work and she sees him sad, she sees him depressed, and she feels that she has to take care of him and that it is inevitable. I have to take care of him. I am a bad sister. How am I not going to do that? It turns out that when we look into her past, as a girl, her grandmother, who had the same name as her, when she was 9 years old, they put her in charge of the care of a 5-year-old little brother, and that brother dies in an accident. He dies burned, and they blame this grandmother who carried that guilt all her life, all her life. when we performed heroic scenes, when we went to the past and traveled to the life of this grandmother. We connected this grandmother with what she truly felt there, and for the first time after more than 100 years she was able to tell her parents, "I hate you for blaming me. How are you going to blame a 9-year-old girl because you left her taking care of a child? I want to be in school. I want to be outside this house. I am mistreated. I am forced. I just realized that that guilt does not belong to me." We gave her a pillow and she told everything to her parents. She released her emotions, and what this person automatically saw is that her brother was another brother, that her brother was no longer like that. She was amazed because her brother was now like her or better than her, telling her, "Let's go forward. We have to do this. We have to do that." The brother changed. Then who was the creator of that victim brother? Pay attention to this word that I am going to say, of that brother with the candid look that she had next to her, that she took care of. All that is because we do not know who we are. The symptom is ignorance of something that is in my past. The judgment is ignorance of something that is in my past. The suffering is something that is ignorance of my past, and the guilt is ignorance of something that is in my past. I love you. What a beautiful sun. Do you like papyrus? Today I changed the recording place to be close to the papyrus. And these posts that we installed here, I love them. I love this sun, and I do not know if you hear a little bit of water that falls there. I share all that beauty of this morning. But above all, I share the relief that you know deeply that you are not guilty of anything, because the guilt is also impossible. Hug. Bye.